Welcome to the Battle Buddy Podcast with Keith McKeever.
Hey there, welcome back to another episode of the Battle Buddy Podcast. Hey, I got to tell you something, folks. I was just telling my guest there's some things I never thought I'd hold up as props. But before we get into that, before I reveal what this episode's about, you might get from the show description. But make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and follow what I'm doing. And obviously, my guest contact information will be on here in a minute. Make sure you go follow him what he's doing too. But the thing I thought I'd never thought I'd have on screen is socks. Podcast for veterans. It's not something you would think of, socks, but believe me, there is a tie-in. So just wait and see here. Without further ado, I've got Will. Thanks for being on the show, Will.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yes, like I said just like a minute ago, I can't believe socks is the tie-in here. But your socks are awesome. They're red, white, and blue, kind of an orangish red, which I'm a Broncos fan. I know I told you that before. So, you know, I look at it in my mind both different ways. It's patriotic. It's also Broncos country colors, in my opinion. Maybe I'm just partly colorblind. I don't know. But either way, they're comfortable. They're made out of bamboo. We'll get to that here in a minute. But go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Will. I'm the founder of Caritas Apparel. And we make bamboo socks and donate 20% of proceeds to end veteran homelessness and suicide. We're partnering with two really amazing 501c3 charities. So really the vision of the company and with this first product line is to directly help veterans who, are at risk for homelessness and suicide and struggling with a lot of the underlying causalities behind those. I think socks are a great medium in which to do that through. Everybody wears socks. Everybody is always losing socks. You never have too many of them.
I think my dryer's got 50 of them sitting in there somewhere.
Yeah.
They go in, they don't come out.
I don't know where they go. They are consumed always. But we launched a couple months ago in August. So just really excited to have the product, out there and sharing it with the world and trying to help veterans through this.
Which is awesome because when we first connected, I was confused too. I'm like, socks, like, what are you doing? And I went to your website and like, okay, all right. Known nonprofits, which is awesome. So I'm like, okay, I was like, I definitely got to have a conversation with this guy, Will, why socks, but they're not just ordinary socks. They're made out of bamboo, which I've told you before I was going to watch a YouTube video on it. I never did get around to it, but I'm that kind of an inquisitive person. I'm going to have to do that later today on actually how they get bamboo, which is such a hard material.
Yeah.
Thin enough to make socks out of, because they're comfortable, and it's not like a thin dress sock. It's not a super thick one, kind of a medium weight, I guess is what I would say it is. But why bamboo?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when I first started the company in March of 2020, which was great timing, obviously with the pandemic, I didn't really know anything about bamboo socks. I'd heard of bamboo like sheets or bamboo mattress or pillow, things like that. But in doing my research and trying to come up with a sock that was really durable, soft, had to be like super stretchy. That was really important to me. I wear a size 15 and my fiance wears a size 7. So it had to fit both of us. So you can probably tell just like in your experience, they're, stretchy, right?
Yeah, they definitely are. Yeah, that's an interesting challenge, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Shoe size difference. Yeah.
Yeah, it's my perpetual challenge. But bamboo really intrigued me in my research because it offers a lot of benefits to cotton in that it's softer than cotton. It's stronger. It's a lot more sustainable as well. It doesn't require as many chemicals to grow in that it naturally. So it's kind of like an invasive species. It'll just pop back up. You just need to give it water. It's a lot more efficient, so it's better for the planet. But it's also naturally antibacterial, and also it absorbs moisture a lot better than cotton. So whether you're wearing it in the winter to keep your feet nice and warm, or you're going out and exercising with them, which I do a lot, it just allows your feet to sort of regulate temperature in better environments, whether it's cold, hot, wet or dry. So all those benefits really intrigued me, and then it took a while of product design and different samples and compositions to really finally land on what you have in your hands there. And I'm really happy with the product that we ended up with.
You have a really good point to kind of hit on the water and moisture and stuff like that, because bamboo flooring, being in the real estate industry, like
Mhm.
that's been kind of a popular thing over the last few years. It's like you said, it grows everywhere,
Yeah.
in the jungle. So um, it's kind of weird to wrap your mind around that, because flooring
Mhm.
needs to be hard and withstand, dropping things on and walking on and all that to making thread out of it.
Yeah, yeah. When you think of the plants and then the end product, it's really hard to like visualize how it gets from A to B. But the bamboo like textile industry has really been growing a lot in recent years, and more products are being made with bamboo because people are just finding that uh, the end product's softer and breathable, and people tend to like it. So it costs a little bit more to make than a traditional sock, but I think it's worth it because I like the way it turned out.
Yeah, and it's sustainable. I mean, it's a lot like hemp in a lot of ways. Like
Hmm.
it can
Yep.
it can grow faster. There's so many different uses for it.
Yep.
So there's a lot of something to it. But so I'm with these socks, and kind of set it up almost like a benefit corporation kind of thing to support these nonprofits.
Mhm.
Um, when did that idea hit you? Like, of hey, we can do this, but let's give something back.
Yeah. So from the very inception of the company, the idea was always to basically use stocks as a medium to make the world a better place. Um, if you look at how consumer tastes have sort of evolved over the past like 10 to 15 years, there's really been a strong appetite and a change, I would say, in conscientious consumerism and people wanting to buy products that support something, an issue that they feel strong about morally. One of the like first companies to do this was Tom's Shoes, where you buy a pair of shoes and they donate a pair. There are a couple other
Yeah.
companies similar that do similar things, like Warby Parker, for instance. Bombas is a sock company that does that. So there's really like a strong social appetite for our purchasing power and our dollars to go to something we care about. So that was kind of in the back of my mind, and I've always been really passionate about veterans issues. I'm not a veteran myself, but I have some family members that are. And I'm just a grateful, just everyday American citizen who's just appreciative, the freedoms that we have here and the sacrifices that were made to enable that. And knowing some of the statistics around issues veterans face, for instance, every day, 17 veterans commit suicide and 40,000 experience homelessness. I think in a country um, as rich as ours, that shouldn't be happening. And if you look at the issues veterans are facing, it, they're ill-equipped from the government and from um, charities. There's just not a large enough basket to help all the people, veterans that need it. And the vision is really to use private purchasing and what is like really the biggest driver of economic growth, just your everyday dollar, your everyday person spending their money. That is what generates wealth and what makes the economy go around. So if you're able to tap into that and create social good through it, that would be the ultimate lever in which to help fill the gap that our veterans are left in ultimately. So that's kind of the grand vision. Long term, we want to introduce more socks with more charities for different causes. But the veteran one is something that really hits home with me and felt strongly about. So that's why this is our first product. And we're really lucky to be able to donate to these really amazing 501c3 charities, which I'd be happy to talk about as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely wanted to ask you. So the two nonprofits you're supporting is Mission 22 and Veteran Community Project. Mission 22, I would argue, is probably the more well known
Yep,
of the
for sure.
two. But so let's just focus on that. So how did you pick that, or was it a connection? Like, how did all that come about?
Yeah, so I had been familiar with Mission 22 for quite some time, and I had donated to them in the past. So I was aware of the brand. I think they've done a really fantastic job of building awareness on the issue, and just making folks aware, as well as the programs that they do. So I knew that they did really amazing work. And what they do, for folks that might not be as familiar, is really focus on treating post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injuries, and military sexual trauma through a number of programs that focus on holistic healing, professional counseling, as well as their resilience and recovery program. So, and they have a lot of partner programs as well in things like equestrian, mixed martial arts, service dogs, runs the list really. So I just knew what they were doing was really important, really powerful, and really making an impact on our veterans who needed it the most. So I reached out to them when I was, starting the company, and was lucky that they wanted to partner with me, being an unknown company. So really, really just grateful for the support.
You have a good point. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, who are you? Just starting a new company, things like that. Yeah, they could have dismissed you pretty quick.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely grateful to have their support, as well as Veterans Community Project, and VCP, to talk about that a little bit as well. Their mission is to end veteran homelessness, and what they do is build um, tiny homes and tiny, veteran villages to serve as transitional housing for homeless veterans and families, as well as offering 360-degree transitional services. So whether that's helping them find a job, or just get counseling, or mental health support, really whatever they need. The goal is to house them in their new home temporarily, and then help them on the journey to full time housing. And that really struck a chord with me, because they're going directly to the problem and solving it in a simple but extremely effective way. And that was powerful. And they started off in Kansas City, but now they've expanded and are building either 5 or 6 locations. So it speaks to me in the sense that they're scaling because it's successful, and it does what it's intended to do, and has public support as well. So they're a little newer, less popular than Mission 22, but I think the work they're doing is equally as impactful.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's Mission 22, PTSD and stuff, substance abuse and all that. Like that, those are two of the three big issues affecting the veteran community: is substance abuse, physical and mental health issues,
Mm-hmm.
and homelessness.
Yeah.
And they're almost, dare I say, pandemic levels. Like,
Yeah,
really all of them. And the Veterans Community Project one is interesting. I know I told you, I'm in real estate, and when you had mentioned it in Kansas City, I was putting two and two together. And I'm like, I think I read about them in a realtor magazine like 2 or 3 years ago or something like that. Good Neighbor Awards or something like that National Association does, something along those lines. And I was like, man, that sounds really familiar. And it's like, I understand that one a little bit more, with obviously the need because it's out there, but they've got to run into a lot of challenges too, fighting city government and using tiny homes and small structures and things like that. But one of the first things you can do to help anybody is help with the basic needs. And one of them is a roof over your head, food, water, roof over your head. That's the big one. Yeah,
for sure. And I think they've had really, really strong support from a state government level, just from an observer's perspective, because of how successful it's been, right? And a lot of these politicians, want to help our veterans, and if they see a solution that's working in their district or in their town, their state, it would be in their best interest to champion that, right? So some of the new locations that they're putting up wouldn't be possible without all of the red tape I'm sure they need to go through. So it's just exciting to see them scaling, and building out their operations and helping more veterans.
Yeah, I hope they're especially expanding. They must be doing a pretty good job of convincing local governments that, my limited understanding, you think about the cost of homelessness. When somebody's homeless, they don't have access to medical care, dental care, mental health, hygiene, sanitation, food on a regular basis, right? That causes medical issues. When they collapse, the ambulance picks them up, takes them to the hospital, and we the taxpayers are paying for that. Which obviously we're glad that they're getting care, but they probably end up right back on the street, and the cycle continues. Or police pick them up for doing something. Or I tell you what, I don't know if it's homeless veterans, but I've heard stories in my hometown here where there was a guy once who was homeless for years. When it got too cold here in the Midwest, he would just go to the police station and urinate on the front door. I'm not advocating that that's a good idea to any of my listeners.
I hear
you. But what did he get for that? Well, other than some handcuffs around his wrists, he got a nice warm place to stay for a couple of days and some food in his belly and a shower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you kind of alluded to it earlier, but a lot of the underlying issues are the same that lead to these really tragic outcomes. It's mental health, PTSD, substance use disorder. These are really a pandemic among a lot of the veteran community, and if you don't address those underlying issues, then you're not really solving anything. You're just putting a Band-Aid on something that's not going to stop.
Absolutely, because I've said for a while that I've heard somebody else say it. I think it was Nick Valentine that said it as a past guest of mine. I've heard him say it a couple of times. That once you get out of the military, they don't care about you anymore. Somebody else fills your spot. They're filling your role. You're gone. You are not essential to the mission anymore. You are now a veteran. You are out. And, and they don't really do a good job transition. I don't know if you're aware of this. The transition program that the government runs for all of our troops getting out is not ran by the Department of Defense, and it's not ran by the VA. It's actually ran by the Department of Labor, and their whole focus is gainful employment. Yeah, it doesn't say anything about connection. Because I've noticed. I guess I call 5 pillars. Lack of connection to the community is a big one.
Yep.
Your close personal relationships. Your parents, your siblings, your kids, your wife, the husband, whatever. Physical and mental health is an issue. Financial and legal issues. And those basic, kind of those basic needs, and roughly 5 pillars there anyway. But when one or more of those things are gone, it usually leads to one of those 3 issues or all.
Yeah, I think, one big issue that I've, noticed and read about as well is just, the challenge that a lot of veterans face when transitioning back into civilian life. You don't necessarily have that same sense of purpose. So how do you readjust that or retarget that in civilian life, as well as just from a strictly employment perspective? How are you going to, transition the skills that you've learned into a civilian job? And a lot of the times that bridge isn't necessarily there. And that's one thing a lot of folks, struggle with. So one thing I really like about Mission 22 is that a lot of their programs really focus on that camaraderie that you would have in the military, because you're going through it with other veterans that are dealing with similar things as you. So that might be something that was there, and you leave the military, it's completely gone. But when you go into some of these programs, you're reintroduced to that, and it can really be profound.
Absolutely. Well, tell you what, as a vet, sometimes nobody understands us like us, and that's why I think the community is so large. It could be going to your local Legion post or VFW post, or a group of vets that gets together and plays softball or flag football in the park, whatever. It's just a connection to something with fellow vets where you're comfortable enough talking, because that's one of the weird thing I think is hard for a lot of us is just to open up and talk to people who don't understand us.
Yeah.
It's not your fault that you can't understand us, but
we didn't have the same experience. So how could we?
And we're also, trained to, the discipline and the, no emotions and, all those things. It's like, can't show weakness.
Yeah.
I've seen plenty of veterans cry on each other's shoulders too. So, it's like we got to show the strength over here, but we're also willing to cry and let loose with ourselves. It's weird, but
I think that also is challenging for some folks just are too proud to seek help this is something that the police community has as well. The rates of PTSD among police officers is extremely high. They face a lot of similar challenges, but there's sort of this culture of not wearing it on your shoulder, so to speak.
Yeah, the old saying is like, man up or walk it off. I know women
Mhm.
do that job too. I'm just saying. Please
Yeah,
don't.
yeah,
Please nobody cancel me on that one. Figure of speech, but those kind of uh, philosophies, if you will, of
mhm.
just suck it up and deal with it.
Yeah, and just I think more generally speaking, there's like a stigma around mental health and seeking help and talking about it. I think we've gotten a lot better at that in recent years, and it's I think trending in the right way. But it still exists, and it's amplified within certain communities.
I would say it's definitely trending in the right direction. I do
Mhm.
see a lot more openness. I mean, I've been out for a while now, and mental health. I mean, when I got out, was not just wasn't talked about.
Yeah,
And now you've got shows talking about it. You got the guys over at Vet TV. I mean, they make humorous TV shows for vets, made by vets, but it also, kind of facilitates some of that and whatnot. So,
hmm
I know I've told you this before. I I appreciate you so much as a vet. Just doing something as simple as making some socks and giving some of the proceeds back to help these organizations. It'd be great. When these nonprofits, they rely on funding 100%. They need it, and a little bit here and a little bit there, and it all adds up and makes the mission happen.
yeah. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate you and your service and all other veterans. I'm just making socks over here, so
And I'm just hosting conversations. So, there's multiple ways to get the mission done, right?
yeah,
So, but I did also want to ask you some questions too, kind of on the business side of things, because I think it's
yeah,
interesting. And a lot of my listeners are entrepreneurs or thinking about getting into that space. And as we talked before, I was like, oh, there's some interesting tie-ins here. So, correct me if I'm wrong. You're not set up as a benefit corporation, like legal entity wise, but you're very much operating like one, giving these proceeds back.
yeah.
What kind of struggles have you encountered doing it that way? That somebody else might be able to, if they're listening to this, might be able to go around that obstacle.
hmm Yeah. So we're set up as a for-profit corporation, but the financial infrastructure is set up in such a way that 20% of proceeds go to these charities, right? So it's sort of a unique situation, right? Because we're for profit, but when we win, the charities also win, and we can't win without the charities winning, right? So it's a unique situation.
I
I
think
think,
some states don't have that though. I could be wrong. I'm not offering
yeah,
legal advice
no,
to my
you're
listeners,
right.
but I do believe that some states have benefit corporations, which is set up this way, where your corporate articles or something like that are designed to do this, and some states don't. So you just kind of do
Mhm.
it in another structure. If
Yeah,
that makes
there.
sense. Yeah. Paint that picture for everybody.
I think it's maybe only like 5 states. I could be wrong. It's been a while since I
Sounds
looked
about
into it,
right.
but it's pretty low. Like there are a few states that do it. But I think for anybody that is thinking of starting a business where you're donating a portion of profits, um, you need to look very strongly at the financial models and have a good understanding of where profitability falls, because stocks are a good one to pick, because they're not super expensive to make. The audience is universal. They're inexpensive to ship and to store. Um, so it's set up in such a way that you can include the revenue donations in the margins, and there's enough room for the business to be a success, and rely on other factors, not just like the 20% isn't going to make or break the business, right? So
But you
I
got to do that analysis to know like where your margins are so that
yeah,
you're not committing yourself. I mean, it would suck to hear somebody be like, well, I'm going to give 50%, to charities. And then like really like their cutoff would be 40 or
yeah,
30
yeah, yeah.
or
No,
20%, whatever, and they're screwing themselves. And they're
for
like, well,
sure.
we opened our mouth already.
Yeah,
I don't know how we're
need
gonna make this work.
exactly. You need the right infrastructure in place and the right financial models for it to make sense to even do that because a lot of other industries the margins just like aren't as good and it wouldn't be feasible. And there's a reason why 99.99% of businesses don't do this. Um, but
Not
I'm
for the faint of
hoping,
heart, right?
yeah,
That's what makes you an entrepreneur, man. You're just crazy enough to go for it.
yeah. I mean, I think if you create a good product, people will buy it, and if it helps people in need, then that's good for business
It's
because
like the field of
people
dreams,
won't
right?
have
If you
other.
build it, they will come.
That's the thought.
Yeah, that is the process
Yeah.
exactly. So, how about any advice for nonprofits then? And working with people who might be looking to do this with their business or approaching somebody. And
Mhm.
I mean, I think that's one of the hard things for nonprofits to do sometimes. I mean, you ask the nonprofits, but I guess what I'm asking is, how could a nonprofit reach out to somebody who's got a successful or at least appearing like a successful business and say, hey, got this crazy idea. Would you be willing to support my mission in some way, shape, or form, or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think there really is a lot of opportunity there. It doesn't have to be like Caritas where it's baked into the business model and every pair it gets 20%. It could be like a promotional thing for like a certain day. I've seen a lot of companies will do things like that where like all proceeds from a day will sort of benefit the charity or percentage or whatever it might be. Um, because I think the power behind that is you reach a different audience, right? The the people that donate to charities are sort of I think of them as like one group of people, but the other bucket, the bigger bucket, just your everyday consumer, might not even know about these charities or donating isn't something that they're thinking of. But if you're able to create a product and provide value to them, that's a whole new revenue stream and donation stream for the charities. So I think it's mutually beneficial if you set the arrangement up in the right way. And I think a lot of businesses could benefit from it, and charities as well. But the challenge is, charities have limited resources. So what's the best use of their time for fundraising, right? It kind of gets into another territory.
Yeah, I know it's difficult to fundraise because a
Yeah,
lot of times you're either setting up a booth and hoping people come by and donate, or you're out there pounding the pavement, working the phones. It's a lot it's a lot of work to fundraise.
yeah,
Or you
absolutely.
could just make 10 partnerships or 5 partnerships or whatever, and let some of that, oh gosh, dare I say, residual income or uh, whatever those terms are,
Hmm.
but when you're running a nonprofit, every penny counts.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
if you're getting $5 from this company or 500 or 5,000, it helps. Every little bit helps. So because I think that there's a lot of potential there for nonprofits.
Yeah, and every resource helps, right? So just a little bit from a lot of people adds up to a lot, and that's what I'm trying to do. I think a pair of socks might not seem like a lot, but one pair of socks at a time over a long period of time that can have a really big impact.
Absolutely. And I guess another thing just jumped in my mind. It doesn't have to be apparel. It could be, it could be your local restaurant, it could be the local diner. Partner with them and say, hey, can we have a special on Friday, like some special menu item and
Hmm.
everything from the sales of that, right? It's like this compound effect and consistency. All of that combined, because like you also mentioned, you've got one pool that are people who have the disposable income to donate to the nonprofit. And that's great. And they definitely love that. But you have
Yeah.
the other pool that can afford to spend money, but they want something of value
Hmm.
and they don't mind that, and they're makes them happy to know that a portion of their proceeds go to support something.
Yeah,
There's
and
value
maybe they never heard about the charity before, and this is the first time.
there. Absolutely. Absolutely. So that is awesome. I appreciate some of those nuggets and sharing with us what your mission is and your socks. And once again, for everybody, they're these cool tiger stripe designs. So I will throw the banner across the bottom there, and it'll be in the show notes as well for anybody to check out. But any last thoughts for us, Will?
Yeah, well, thanks you so much for having me on. I think it was a really good conversation. I would just encourage anybody who's listening to go check out Mission 22 and Veterans Community Project. They both do really amazing work for our veterans. And if you want a new pair of socks, you can go check us out. But thanks again for having me on.
Absolutely. Like I said, I'll have that in the show notes as well. So the people that are listening and not watching down the road, wherever that is, they'll know where to go. Maybe by that point in time, you'll have some different colors. I'm excited to see whatever you can come up with and what charities there you're supporting too, because that's kind of cool to support different things. But I'll have that in there in Mission 22 and Veteran Community Project. I'll have it all linked in there. And of course, I'll throw you up on my website too. I put all my guests on there, and so people can always go contact you if they want to reach out. So, Will, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all about socks and bamboo and some advice for some business owners.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Take it easy.
All right, thank you. Bye.
All right, there you have it, folks. An episode about socks. Never would have imagined, but they are awesome socks. And make sure you go check out our website, battlebuddypodcast.net. As always trying to add resources on there. And if you're struggling for any reason, remember the new suicide hotline number is 988-PRESS-1, or you can text 838-255.